The debut of Marcus Freeman as head coach started out beautifully. Notre Dame up 28-7 with 1:16 to go in the first half, and then it all went in the opposite direction as Oklahoma State scored 27 unanswered points. Notre Dame could do nothing offensively, and they were gassed by the end of this game. Defensively, as Oklahoma State wins the Fiesta Bowl 37-35 to drop Marcus Freeman to 0-1 heading into the offseason.
And no matter what they say, they were gassed because they gave up 34 first downs. And Tim, that hasn't happened to Notre Dame defense since USC in 2014, when that game was not even a contest at any point. Look, they prepared for tempo, but they prepared inadequately for tempo because they couldn't slow anything. It was if Oklahoma State got a couple yards positive yards on first down, the rest of the drive was an avalanche. It was if Notre Dame didn't stop them on first down, it was over. And that's just not the hallmark of this Notre Dame defense. They say one play, one life. They kept getting one play against them.
Oklahoma State was 0 for 6 in the first half on third down. They finished 3 of 14 on third down.
You would think that would be the winning.
You would think so, game. But and it was because they didn't need third down most of the time. As you said, the momentum on first and second down, and it was just an avalanche. Notre Dame secondary, no match for this passing offense. Clarence Lewis really had a very difficult day, and you don't have too many options. You can throw Ryan Barnes in there, but let's be realistic. You're not going to win a Fiesta Bowl with a guy that hasn't played cornerback yet. So 34 first downs is incredible. Everybody wants us to say that the Notre Dame coaching staff was outcoached. Well, of course they were. They were buried. Marcus Freeman was a first-time head coach going against a 17-year head coach who made the adjustments at halftime and buried them. Tommy Rees was brilliant in the first half and had no answers in the second half. Mike Elston, probably a little bit in over his head, as most guys would be with tempo. So we're not here to make any excuses for anybody. Notre Dame was awful with the game on the line. And, and this is why I said all along, Tim, I mean, there was a coronation of Marcus Freeman that everything was going to be better. And then you go up against a 17-year head coach who has 60 minutes to make adjustments. And they were just way better prepared than Notre Dame was.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Kelly lost this lead once in his career 10 years ago against Michigan. I think it was 28-7 as well. But look, you could feel it coming when Oklahoma State answered the 28-7 with the score, and knowing they got the ball in the second half, how fast they started moving the ball down the field in the third. I mean, you could feel in the third quarter, not at the half. In the third quarter, you're like, look, they don't seem to have an answer for these guys, especially when they throw to Tay Martin. 3 touchdowns in a row. He took it from 28-7 to 28-all. I asked Marcus Freeman about how do you help Clarence Lewis without compromising the rest of your defense, which probably would have happened. He said he has faith in Lewis, which you're going to say after the game. I mean, I think the only thing you can do is ask Cam Hart to follow Tay Martin, but Presley had 100 yards and 10 catches too. It was not going to be that easy. I just didn't think the perimeter would be that obvious against Notre Dame. We talked about how it could be a problem without Kyle Hamilton, but that was beyond my dreams of what Oklahoma State could do passing.
DJ Brown was not the DJ Brown that we had seen in the second half of the season, and we said it for a month. We said it for a month that this was an Oklahoma State team that was really good and could beat Notre Dame. And then when, you felt like even when Oklahoma State was making a comeback, you thought, okay, Notre Dame's offense can still do some things, because Jack Cohn ended up throwing for 509 yards, had 4 touchdowns and 342 yards in the second half. But again, that's a veteran coaching staff, even without their defensive coordinator, going against an inexperienced group, and it absolutely showed. Marcus Freeman said the honeymoon is over.
Yeah.
The honeymoon should have been over several weeks ago, but it wasn't. And I'm not saying that that's what ended up costing Notre Dame here, but this coronation of a coach who's following one that won 54 games in 5 years was absurdly premature, and we saw it come to light today.
I think tactically on the field, when Oklahoma State realized, man, they are killing us with this passing game, short passing game, and then we're vulnerable underneath downfield, but they cannot run on us. They were daring Notre Dame to run. Notre Dame tried not to run. They tried to stay with the pass as much as they could. I mean, it resulted in some under 1 minute drives. Then a couple times they ran a couple times and they couldn't get a yard. I mean, I believe it's 5 drives took less than 1 minute in the second half for Notre Dame. And you're not managing clock there. You're most of the time they're trying to come back. Actually, it was a fast comeback by Oklahoma State. It's not like they sat on it and lost it. But when you saw that Notre Dame could not run at all, and Jack Cohn had to throw on every play, and Jack Cohn can't escape, but he has to throw on every play, and he can never get away from the rush. Like there'd be rushing lanes for Spencer Sanders if he had to throw every play. There were no rushing lanes. He couldn't take advantage of them. All of a sudden, it was a one-dimensional offense that seemed great in the first half. And I cannot remember a half change like that for Notre Dame football. It was not the same in Michigan.
No, it wasn't. And one dimension against a defense that good is going to catch up to you. There's no doubt about that. We knew about, look, we saw the way Notre Dame ran the football in the first half of the season. This was the best defense that they faced since Wisconsin. You knew they weren't going to be able to run. Tommy Rees knew they weren't going to be able to run. I thought he did some really great things in the first half, but in the second half, I mean, I'm not an apologist for Tommy Rees. They got out coached. And I think part of it is a bit undermanned in some spots at wide receiver at times, relying on a Braden Lenzy to be a big play guy throughout the game. And he's not that. He hasn't established that. He eventually got the ball to Michael Mayer a couple times for touchdowns, and they finally set the record up for tight ends for touchdowns at Notre Dame, but it just wasn't enough. And this program needs to get a lot better. And you can say Notre Dame's 4 stars compared to Oklahoma State's 4 stars, but it's a very well-coached team on the other side of the football. And the best team over the course of 60 minutes absolutely deserved to win.
I want to go to that point because of my preview I wrote. I know Notre Dame has more talent. I don't know who has more developed upper class talent. And it seemed like Oklahoma State did without Kyron and Kyle Hamilton.
No doubt. And they have 9 starters on defense, and that event, 9 senior starters on defense, and that eventually showed itself.
You think about it, Notre Dame's best player besides Cohn was Lorenzo Styles with a breakout effort. Chris Tyree in the first half had a great first half. But you have pointed this out. When there's not room, Tyree is not the back you need to run the ball because he doesn't have the wiggle. When there is room, I think Chris Tyree can be a great back because he hits a crease and he's gone. Logan Diggs, I thought, was too patient, too picky a little bit early when he was running the ball today.
When you're running against a defensive front like that, the second half of the season, you can pick and choose, and Kyron Williams shows the way how to do that. But against a front like this, you can't do it. You have to slam it up in there. And try to break through a crease, but it's the best team won, the best coach team won. We tried to tell everybody that Oklahoma State was really good. Tried to point out how many times the Notre Dame was missing some of their best players. They weren't going to be able to run the football. The surprising thing is that you built a 28-7 lead and lost it. Yeah, but it's a 60-minute game, man. And
none of 605 yards and 34 touchdowns seemed possible for Oklahoma State. I could not have foreseen that under any circumstance.
Well, the whole thing was out of whack right from the very beginning. That we kept saying tug of war and slugfest. And this
was for one team in the second half.
Yeah, this was, but it wasn't that. And sometimes you get games that get a little out of hand. And this one got out of hand today. And again, to reiterate, Marcus Freeman said the honeymoon is over. And it is. He's got a lot of work to do. He's got to hit the ground running. He has to make a decision about a defensive coordinator. That doesn't look like it's going to stay in-house after something like that. It's a little bit unfair. I think it's unfair where we immediately, as soon as one unit struggles, it's the coordinator's fault and it's all falling apart.
They tackled very poorly.
They tackled very poorly. Notre Dame did not execute well at all in the second half. It's the responsibility of the coaches and the coordinators to make sure that happens. But they can only do so much. At a certain point, it's up to the players, and Oklahoma State players were ready to perform and ready to go out and win a football game. In the second half, Notre Dame's players were not.
And they looked slow at times, and tempo got them. I asked Marcus Freeman how prepared they were for tempo. He said, of course they prepared for tempo. I didn't word that properly. I know they prepared for tempo, but it seemed like Oklahoma State had something on them with the tempo. And we asked Drew White, or someone asked Drew White, were you guys often having trouble communicating? He said there might have been 1 or 2 instances. It seemed like more than that to me, where there were guys turning around trying to communicate something. And if you're a half step slow, you're missing your best player on the back end, and you're relying on DJ Brown athletically and Clarence Lewis athletically, and you're not reading the play, and you're, as I said, a half step slow against an athlete like Martin, it makes you look worse than you probably are. I mean, Clarence Lewis is better than that.
Yeah.
Not today he
Not
wasn't, but
today.
he's better than
Not
that.
today. Wasn't the best team won today. And congratulations, Oklahoma State. Notre Dame has a lot of work to do. The Marcus Freeman era has begun. Off to a slow start. Now we have 8 months of speculating
great.
and
Yeah.
critiquing and thinking of all the negative things that weren't anticipated a few hours ago. It's the final score in the Fiesta Bowl. It's Oklahoma State 37, Notre Dame 35.